Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which takes place every October and now in its 19th year, is a collaboration between government and private industry to raise awareness about digital security and empower everyone to protect their personal data from digital forms of crime. Joining me for this segment, we have Joe Gallo, Software Equity Research Associate with Jefferies Equity Research, to discuss why cybersecurity fundamentals are immune to macro headwinds. It's great to have you with us, Joe. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Hey, Jill, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Thanks.
Got it, Joe. And that seems to be a consistent theme with cyber experts such as yourself that I've spoken with over the course of the month. Why are cyber fundamentals immune to what we're seeing in a challenging macro space?
Well, it doesn't matter what happens with the economy. Attacks still go up, right? You see it every day with nation states. I mean, there's the threat of nuclear war. Security remains the clear-cut #1 priority of all enterprises. You can ask any CISO, any CIO. It should continue to rise as a percentage of IT budgets. Our survey work has shown that enterprise software, particularly cybersecurity software, will be most resilient. Those budgets will not decrease even if the macro intensifies in 2023. Now, that said, it's not totally immune, right? Our own internal economist has said that, listen, 23 might be tougher sledding. There might be some layoffs as we move through halfway through that year. At the end of the day, these models are seat-based, so they may see some pressures or maybe lack of tailwinds they've seen the last 2 years. But the prioritization is not going away because the attacks aren't going away.
What areas of cyber are most insulated from the macro?
All cyber is positioned well. Our own CIO survey has just indicated that network security and endpoint security are probably the most resilient. At the end of the day, Jill, if you and I were to create a business, the first thing we would do is probably buy endpoint security, put it on our devices, put it on our PCs. The second thing we do is probably buy network security. So whether we have a data center, we want to protect the infrastructure there, or if we have assets in the cloud, we want to protect that. Those are probably the two most important areas. The other area that'll probably benefit is the combination of all these categories, right? So the large platforms, think the Fortinets, the Palos, the CrowdStrikes, that can consolidate numerous spend categories, right? It's cheaper to buy 10 widgets from one company than it is to buy 10 widgets from 10 different companies. And therefore, even though you increase your spend on these platforms, you can actually save a CISO or a CIO a lot of money. And those are the areas that are probably the most resilient.
Joe, are investors buying into this investment theme? What's the sentiment like, and what are some of the key investor debates?
Yeah, so I think if you step back, like broadly, the sentiment of software is very negative, right? And I think investors are kind of just like trying not to lose their shirt in the storm and figure out where they can find safe harbor. For the past year, that has been in cybersecurity, right? And so I think that now it's, hey, is cybersecurity immune? And what happens if the macro winds intensify? I think a lot of investors have started to shift toward looking to what's going to go on in calendar 23. There's a long-standing line, you buy the confession. Well, I think a lot of investors are waiting to see what that trajectory of broader software companies looks like in calendar 23. And usually when you give guidance, you give a number that you can hit for the year. And so that's kind of like the entry point. I think that in cyber, it's a little bit different in that these companies have been more resilient. And that when they acknowledge macro, it's really the macro for their customers. Hey, it's not really impacting us. They've been hit a little bit, and so maybe it moderates a little bit. At the end of the day, I think you buy the platforms, and you buy the platforms that are at reasonable valuation. So think the Palo Altos and Fortinets of the world.
All right, and to wrap up here, which cybersox do you think are going to work for next year in 2023?
Well, we kind of just got into it a little bit there, but the Palo Alto is probably our favorite name, right? It gives you network security, whether you want it hybrid on premise or whether you want it in the cloud. Fortinet as well. They're both competitors in the network security, but Fortinet sits more in the SMB mid-market. It's more cybersecurity for the masses. Palo Alto plays very nicely in the enterprise, and then CrowdStrike on the endpoint, right? So all three of these vendors are large platforms that can consolidate numerous silos of spend, and we think they're positioned to take advantage of some of the point solutions and smaller private solutions that might not be able to get the net new logos they need in 23.
All right, Joe, appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.